anything that has electricity running through it is potentially leaking electric fields. And near-infrared and red have 100% healing effects, basically on living tissues, on animals that have mitochondria. You name it, it's got mitochondria and it's waiting to receive this near-infrared light and heal. I'm gonna unplug the grounding mat. It won't be grounded anymore. Watch what happens.
Oh my gosh. You guys have heard me talk before about the importance of getting sunlight. But let's face it, we don't get out as much as we need to. And in the winter, the angle of the sun is different to the earth, and so you don't get the benefit of all those rays. That's why near and far infrared light therapy is so important for healing the body and helping it function properly. I got to talk to Brian Richards about all of this recently, and it was a fascinating conversation. He really knows his stuff. He's the head of Sauna Space, and he talks to us about the benefits of warmth and light therapy. Check it out. We just took an amazing dip in the ocean. We're here on the Florida beaches. It's amazing. Talk to me, Brian, about why the sunshine is so important for our health.
Well, the sun nourishes all life on Earth. All life. Without the sun, there would be no life here, and that includes humans. And so it turns out that we're like plants. We eat light, and we do it in a different way. Instead of photosynthesis and with the chlorophyll and all that stuff, we have the mitochondria. The mitochondria is not just the powerhouse of the cell, it's an intelligent actor that does so many healing, wonderful, amazing things like regeneration and inflammation reduction and anti-aging, which is DNA repair, including epigenetic DNA repair. And all of that happens because the mitochondria is a light receptor. So it has these light receptor proteins on it that absorb only certain wavelengths of light, and it turns out it's actually the biggest chunk of sunlight that we get from the sun's emission, from the solar radiation. It's called near-infrared light.
And does the sun always produce the near-infrared light?
Yeah, the solar emission, so the light from the sun is what's called a full spectrum emission. It's all of the wavelengths from 0 to infinity, basically, in nanometer wavelength measurements, but a very particular power distribution that comes from what we call incandescent light or incandescence. So the sun's burning at 6,000 degrees or even hotter, and that when you heat up a material hot enough in nature, it begins to emit light naturally. And we know from modern physics we can predict this, and it's called Planck's law. And so the prediction that we get from Planck's law almost perfectly matches the per wavelength measurement we can measure from the sun. And so from the sun, when we're standing outside, it's simultaneously emitting all of these wavelengths, but with higher power outputs of some more than others. So, for example, near-infrared comprises the largest plurality of the sun's emission. It's over 40%.
And the near-infrared is the most healing part for our bodies, right? Because didn't you say to me one time that the sun both damages and heals?
Yeah, so we know that the sun can burn you and it can cause sunstroke. That's because of the ultraviolet and the blue. So the ultraviolet is ionizing radiation, UV, UV, that's why we have all these UV blockers and things. UV bleaches clothing, and it's because, and with us it burns us, but it's not a thermal burn, it's a photochemical burn. The ultraviolet is breaking apart our DNA and causing genetic mutation and damage. And the blue light is too. Blue light is right next to ultraviolet. It's not quite as strong as ultraviolet, but it indirectly, through free radical formation, causes the same kind of DNA damage over time. And so those are what some refer to as the killer wavelengths of the sun. But every second that those wavelengths are hitting you, the ultraviolet and the blue from the sun, you're getting even more near-infrared and red. And red and near-infrared are what have this healing effect by triggering healing functions of the mitochondria.
What I like about this, it reminds me of vitamins A and D that Sally Fallon-Morell, the president of the Weston A. Price Foundation, has told me that they work together. So if you just try to take a supplement of, let's say, D or A, you're kind of missing the synergy that happens. So this near-infrared works well with the blue. So while the blue and the ultraviolet are kind of hurting us, the near-infrared is healing. Is that right?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, there's no question that blue and ultraviolet are killer wavelengths. They're so high energy that they're damaging to whatever they hit. And near-infrared and red have 100% healing effect, basically on living tissues, on animals that have mitochondria. And we have mitochondria in pretty much every cell of our body except red blood cells. So our bones, our nerves, our gut, our kidneys, our skin, you name it, it's got mitochondria in there. It's waiting to receive this near-infrared light and heal. That's not to say that there's no role for blue or ultraviolet. Even though they're killer, we have adapted to them. So we have some evolutionary adaptation to that. One thing is we need blue light to trigger production of melatonin, particularly in the pineal gland during the day. So normally we're outside at sunrise and we're getting the killer wavelengths, but we're getting the healing regenerative wavelengths in a bigger chunk even. So the sun is really regenerating and healing us more than it's killing us. But even that killer part has a biological function. It's helping the body, and particularly the pineal gland, produce melatonin, the sleep hormone. And you need that production because at the end of the day, when the sun sets and the blue light stimulus ends, the pineal gland releases the melatonin into the supracranial cortex, the brain clock, and that's what gets the process of going to sleep for us ready.
Right, but as you say that, I'm like, oh my gosh, the blue light in a way never ends because, dude, we have our blue lit screens, right? We have our cell phones and our TVs and our laptops. So we're giving ourselves more of the light that is inhibiting the release of melatonin and whatnot.
Right, at the end of the day, even if we were outside in the sun, we go inside, and instead of ending our blue light exposure, we continue it with our artificial screens, artificial light sources, and that tells us to stay awake. And that tells our body, the sun has not set yet. Do not go to sleep. But that's not natural because we're designed to go to sleep every day. We have this relationship that's called a circadian rhythm, our cycle of sleep, and we're very much tied to it.
Yeah.
And we can violate it, by shining a lot of blue light on ourselves, keep ourselves up late, and we can get a lot of work done late. But we will pay the consequences not only the next day, but during our sleep. It disrupts our sleep, and you can see that in measuring people's sleep patterns. The deep sleeps are not as deep. Some people don't have much REM sleep at all. It has just a lot of different disrupting effects. A lot of people, their normal sleep cycle is a flat line, which essentially means you're not getting the recovery and healing you're supposed to get. So I'm a huge fan of the sauna, right? And of light therapy, but just as important in that for healing and regeneration is an ideal sleep experience. And you totally screw that up by getting blue light after dark from these artificial sources.
And so I'm thinking, what happens to those of us who don't get sunrise sun and are indoors most of the time? What happens to our mitochondria? Are they like starving, kind of?
They're basically not working as well. And so it's interesting nowadays, mitochondrial health is not just one of the most innovative parts of alternative health right now. It can be used in many ways. It can be used, for example, as a marker of longevity. The health of your mitochondria is directly related to basically how long you're predicted to live. And so the mitochondria, everything in your body is always kind of degrading. And your body has all these amazing repair and quality control systems to fix things while you're making proteins in the DNA, but also the mitochondria can help repair the DNA itself, the blueprint. The heat shock proteins that are produced with sauna therapy go out and refold messed up proteins. So the body's constantly trying to correct itself as because the aging process is constantly degrading us. So it's a thing where we need to support that. And so if you look at the mitochondria, and there's an association, this is also related to the metabolic theory of cancer, the Beard theory of cancer, that there becomes a point where a certain percentage of the mitochondria start to break down and don't work well, and when that percentage of broken, malfunctioning mitochondria gets to a certain tipping point, we start to get really serious diseases. So you need to look this up more. I'm really summarizing it, but the metabolic theory of cancer is where the mitochondria is stuck in fermentation. So the mitochondria is supposed to produce energy through cellular respiration. That's the most efficient way, when we take the sugar and you use oxygen and you make all this energy in this really efficient way. But when you exercise, eventually you run out of oxygen and your body goes back to this more primitive way of making energy called fermentation. but fermentation produces toxic byproducts like the lactic acid and stuff.
Yeah.
So, so going back to the mitochondria, some of the mitochondria are stuck 100% of the time, stuck in fermentation. And so the cancer theory is, well, if we can have a zero sugar diet, starve those cells that have broken mitochondria of sugar, because they can't do anything else, they die off, and will support the healthy cells that don't have broken mitochondria. And so all that to say that yes, the mitochondria are essential to life, and yes, they can break down. And in fact, when they break down, that may be one of the fundamental causes of illness.
Wow.
And conversely, if we can go in and work on those mitochondria and get them to do better, it may be one of the most powerful ways to support the body's journey back to optimal health.
Oh my gosh, that's why I'm such a big fan of getting the morning sun, and I get the sunset as often as possible. Of course, I'm outside as much as possible to get the healing rays of the sun. But then there are days, Brian, when I can't do it, whether it's raining or I'm working all day on my computer, and that's where the sauna comes in. So I just want you to tell us a little bit about why the near infrared sauna light is so helpful in healing the mitochondria.
Well, because it's to be precise, it's near infrared, but near infrared is only a portion of what it emits. It's technically an incandescent light source. And so I mentioned that a little earlier. The sun is also an incandescent light source. It's a fancy word people mostly associated with the incandescent light bulb.
Yeah.
But it's actually a physics phenomena. It's the light of nature. Natural light is broad spectrum. It's a full spectrum light coming from materials that are just basically heated up hot enough in nature to emit light naturally. So obviously the sun is the greatest example, but other examples include if you heat up an iron rod really hot, it glows red. That's incandescence. The incandescent bulb has a tungsten filament inside that's burning at 2000 degrees. So it's producing a naturalistic light, natural light in the form that we evolved under the sun, the form that we're used to, and really the form that our cells crave. And that form is primarily near infrared like the sun, but there's also, the near infrared has a couple of roles. The one we're talking about here is stimulating mitochondrial healing. But near infrared, outside of the mitochondrial stimulation band, sort of the lower energy near infrared, is partially absorbed by water and has a heating effect, has a radiant, very effective, deep penetrating heating effect. So it's heating you. And that's like the sun does.
Yeah.
When you sit in front of the sun, even if there was no blue or ultraviolet, the thermal infrared would still heat you. And so what we're getting in the sauna, in the sauna that we do, is incandescent light, primarily near infrared, that's both stimulating your mitochondria for light therapy healing and also heating you for hyperthermic therapy benefits, for the sauna, the benefits of the sauna. And so obviously the sun is the best. I mean, ideally, we would all return, to our ancestral roots and live like our ancestors did. It's just not practical nowadays to do that. It's in fact impossible. I'd say for most people, look, we're all stuck in this life. We got to work for a living. We got to make money. We got to provide for ourselves and our families. So we have to work, and typically we're working indoors. And so the next best thing, I think, if you're not living that perfect ancestral lifestyle, is to have a reliable daily source of incandescent light that is as close as possible matching sunlight. And so that's what we do at Sauna Space, where we develop this thermal light bulb that is even more precisely mimicking the sun's emission, much more so than a standard heat lamp. And we're saying, hey, yes, it's not as good as the sun, obviously not. But if you don't have the sun, or if you're in northern climates where there is not much sun in the winter, or you are like the rest of us lay people and you have to work for a living, then the next best thing is to get inside an incandescent sauna and get that light dose, that dose of near infrared that your body needs every day. It's absolutely the ultimate nutrient. We talk about nourishing all life on Earth. It nourishes our bodies. It gives us cellular energy. It boosts cellular metabolism without sugar. So it actually satisfies your caloric requirement part.
Yeah.
When you get in the sun and you're out in the sun having fun in the sun, you don't have to eat as much.
Yeah, that's true.
You roll with things. But it does so many other things too. And nowadays with the disease that we're all struggling with as a society, you know, in the ill state of our collective health, it's really not just a luxury anymore. It's really kind of an essential thing because of this, you know, this tidal wave of toxins that we're dealing with, including now the electrosmog.
Yes, yes. Well, we'll have you on this channel again to talk to us about that exactly, and we'll also demonstrate you guys some of the measurements of the special sauna that Brian has designed that has this Faraday kind of protection from the electrosmog he's discussing. And then also, I'll show you how I actually implement sauna use in my everyday life. Thank you so much. I've loved this conversation.
Thank you, Hilda.
So Sauna Space has some really unique characteristics, ways in which you've designed this to eliminate our exposure to electric waves and such, right?
Yeah, this is our Faraday product. It's a little unusual looking because it's featuring our new turmeric hand-dyed turmeric canvas. So, but what we're here to do today is basically demonstrate not just, well, in general how Faraday cages work, but also how the Sauna Space Faraday cage works. And we're going to measure two different things. We're going to measure electric fields from electricity first, and then afterward we're going to measure the electrosmog, so the wireless radiation, and show how effective the Faraday is in blocking this and preventing it from getting to your body, so it doesn't stress you out.
Because even the electricity in our homes, in other words, the wiring in this place for the lights downstairs and the lights here on our ceiling and the everything, it's all kind of affecting my own charge.
Yeah, it's one form of electric field. It's all basically 60 hertz, so that's low frequency. So that's like the original form of EMF, let's call it, before you had cell phones and wireless transmissions in the air. The very first thing we invented that was non-native EMF was electricity. And we've all grown up with it. It's all around us. It is a form of EMF that's very pervasive, hard to protect against, and yeah, again, it's every home has it. So it's something we all grew up with. And so what we're going to do to measure it is we're going to use this pretty sensitive, this GeoVitals near field field probe. So this is a way to measure sources of electric field from electricity, as well as measuring how it affects our body, so we can measure body voltage too. So again, this is the GeoVitals, and as you notice, I have it grounded. So it has a ground cable that's plugged into the ground of the wall, and that reduces the electrical potential of the meter and my influence on it to zero, which means my body is not influencing the measurement, which means that our measurement is really sensitive. So we're going to measure as accurately as possible the real electric field around us and also how it affects me and you. Good. So let's see. So we measure, the floor or something. We got a little bit creeping through the floor. See, it won't quite want to go down. Now let's measure me. So every time you move the antenna, it adjusts. So you have to try to keep it stable, but I'm over 2200 volts per meter. That's pretty high.
Yeah.
Ideally, that would be close to zero.
It looks like the danger.
And we want to measure you as well. Hilda's almost she's pretty much as high as me, 2200 volts per meter. And that makes sense because we're standing in the same area. It's really hitting us both the same. So watch what happens when I go inside. So I'm going to try to show you how it drops. When I go inside the Sauna Space Faraday, see how it's already dropping?
Oh my gosh, it's down to zero.
It's down to zero. It's not low, it's zero. Now if I move the antenna, it will adjust again, but essentially we're at a 0 point. Now let's show you some other interesting features of the Faraday cage. So some of you may ask, well, what is a Faraday cage? A Faraday cage is a 6-sided volume, a structure of some kind that prevents electric fields from going in or out. And they use it in laboratories to test things with precise accuracy, but also we're using it to protect ourselves from all this non-native EMF that's out here. So Hilda, if you want to grab my hand.
Oh.
So we're breaking the Faraday cage now. The electric fields are going up your feet, into your body, through this handshake, and into me. Oh. Now let go, because I don't need any more of that. So really quickly, we go back to zero. So it's interesting what's happening here. I'm not touching any metal. I'm not in contact directly with any ground. I'm on top of a bamboo mat. But what I'm surrounded by is a stainless steel fabric that we've developed. That's actually all connected together to the tungsten's ground and then grounded out to the wall. So it's kind of like a protective barrier. The Faraday cage is this protective barrier all around us. And so the question is, first of all, why isn't it coming through the hole in the door?
Yeah.
And that's because it's kind of like acting as a moat and a magnetic, kind of like a heat sink for electric fields. So the electric fields want to go to ground. They want to go to ground because they want to go to the lowest electrical potential point. And right now, because I'm in here, it's easier for those electric fields to go into the stainless steel fabric and be grounded, and harder for them to get to me. So they just want to go to the lowest electrical potential point, and they're preferentially, going by way of the Faraday cage instead of going to me. So even though the curtain's totally open here, there is no electric field influence on my body. Period.
I have a question.
From wired electricity.
Okay. Do other saunas have this Faraday feature?
To my knowledge, no. We're the only ones who have developed this. People have been asking for it for a long time, and we set on a path to develop it several years ago. The first generation Faraday was pretty expensive and kind of a prototype, kind of a first gen. But we've continued to refine it. It used to have a separate layer underneath the bamboo mat. We integrated the stainless steel material underneath the bamboo. So actually, for those of you who are looking at our standard sauna, the Luminati, it has the bamboo grounding mat as well. It's not totally 100% perfect protection from electric fields, because sometimes they can come from the lights and get on top of the canvas and then go into the body. But this is still an amazing barrier, and that comes standard with our sauna. It's a standard feature of our sauna. And I really know their sauna's even thinking about this. It's one. First of all, most saunas are not shielding their product, so there's no electric field from the product, which I can show you right now. But what we've done is we said, okay, we're going to shield our product and make it locked down like an iron box, so there's no EMF coming from the product and getting to the user.
That's amazing.
But that's not enough. We need to protect the user from the ambient environmental EMF, because we know it stresses the body and we know it's limiting the healing experience.
I know when I walked into this thing, I do feel like I'm in a kind of sanctuary, a special place that's set apart where there's not all this buzziness that I'm used to experiencing, basically.
Yeah, you feel it, and it's kind of startling. It's kind of unusual. You come inside, and especially your first session, it's weird. What is this? Well, this is true solace. This is real relaxation, not just of the mind, but of the body in terms of environmental stresses. Since we have all this electricity and this wireless radiation on our bodies all the time, we kind of get used to it. Human constitution, we're really strong. We can take a lot of stress. So we get used to it and we forget. But all of a sudden, when you go out in the woods and you're away from everything, there's no cell phone signal, there's no electricity, you just have this weight that's kind of lifted from your shoulders, and your sleep's better and everything's better. And you can't quite put your finger on it. What is it?
That's what I was going to say. The only other time I've experienced it is when I've gone camping or gone in nature, far away from the maddening crowd, as they say.
Yeah, so unfortunately, that is, where are those places anymore where you can't get wireless cell phone signal? Even when you're camping now, you have the radiation on your body. So it's a sad state of affairs, but this space that we've created here for some people is their only escape from EMF. Whether they're outside at the park or even if you go camping, and out in the woods, and if you can answer your cell phone, then you're not in an EMF-free space.
Wow.
And when I say EMF-free, I mean free from man-made EMF.
Mm-hmm.
There's good EMF, that's the natural native EMF, the light from the sun, the frequency of the earth. There are other aspects of our environment where we have good EMF. It's the man-made EMF that's really being demonstrated as problematic. So let me show you real quick before we move to measuring the wireless RF, because I want to show you that the ground, how the panel itself is also shielded.
So in a regular sauna, the exposure to this electricity would be giving me a non-native electromagnetic field, right?
Yeah, anything that has electricity running through it is potentially leaking electric fields. So what we want to do is make sure that we use grounding and shielding principles to trap those leaky electric fields and get them away from us, so that there's some other place that they want to go that is a lower electrical potential, essentially. So what we've done is we've shielded all the wiring on the inside of the panel. All of our light guards, these metallic light guards, these stainless steel guards, are actually their own Faraday cages. They're trapping the electric field from the bulb, because it's not enough to shield the wiring or to have a shielded power cord, which is we've done. How do you protect the user from the electricity that's running through the filament of the bulb? So I can show you that if we open this up real quick. You can see, you hear that? Can you see that? I don't want to, my antenna gets so hot so fast that, but there's definitely, and I can show you this way as well. So if I push the antenna inside that Faraday cage, see how I'm getting a reading? That's because there's electric field running through it, because there's electricity running through it. We need that for the light and the health benefit. But what we don't want is the toxic byproduct of the electric field. So the Faraday cages of the guards is locking down this point all the way to the front. So when I sit in here again, I'm in front of this electricity, and I'm immediately dropping down. Again, the antenna, as soon as you jiggle it, it readjusts, but I'm back down in the safe zone. Now, what's really interesting too is I'm going to show you how the grounding mat is actually working. So let's see. This will be easier probably, Hilda, if you hold it. So just sit there and just put it on your thigh or something. You just don't want to move it, or you want to kind of get it so the camera can see it. It's kind of, you want to lay the wand on it and then try not to jiggle. Oh, here, I can do it better because my hand's more steady than yours. I'll put it on your leg. And we'll turn it to the... Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug the grounding mat. So it won't be grounded anymore. Watch what happens.
Oh my gosh.
So this is an interesting thing. We have the Faraday cage around us, right?
Yeah.
The cover's actually... So the cover's still grounded, the light panel's still grounded, but now the mat's not grounded. So all those electric fields are, because the mat, the metal in the mat's no longer grounded, what is it doing? It's almost acting like an antenna. It's attracting electric fields, and instead of protecting us, it's bringing them into us, and those electric fields are getting excited. They're like, oh, we want to go to that lower electrical potential point, which is the person's body right now. So very important that if you're making, if you're trying to protect yourself from electric fields, that you use grounding principles, not just metal, but grounded metal. And then the other thing that's important is, notice again what I said earlier, I'm not touching any metal. And I'm not touching any metal because I don't want to act as the neutral. If I have a lot of electric fields, and this is a different video we need to do, if I have electric fields running through my body and I touch a grounded piece of metal of some kind like this, the meter will show 0. But I'm standing out there and the electric fields are definitely hitting me. So what's happening? Electric fields are coursing through me and going to ground as they want to. But instead of the Faraday cage protecting me, I am becoming the pathway of the electric fields, the highway for them. And so the meter is giving a false impression of what's really going on. And so that's why you don't want to be touching grounded metal. You want to use grounded metal around you to keep the electric fields from ever getting to you. So there's certain things out there, certain products and of different types that in which you're directly contacting the metal of the grounding product. And if you and that's what we believe to be an incorrect approach to grounding.
I see.
Even though you get fooled, because you measure your body's voltage, it seems to be 0, but it's only 0 because you're touching a grounded object. It's not, the grounded object is not protecting you. And so you have to be really careful. This is just a great example of how tricky it is to address man-made electric fields and keep them from getting to us and affecting us and limiting and compromising this healing experience, or elsewhere, elsewhere where you're using Faraday cages.
So you've mentioned the concept to me before of electrosmog, that we're surrounded by radio frequencies that are stressing our bodies out. Can we measure that in some way?
Yeah, absolutely. We can measure it in a number of ways. The affordable way would be like an acousticom or acoustimeter. Those are affordable meters you can buy online, and it's basically a little brick meter like this that you hold in the air, and you can measure volts per meter from high frequency electric fields, which is what's in the air. It's also called RF, radio frequency. It's also called cell phone radiation, microwave signal. Just think of it as all the wireless transmissions in the air. They're all high frequency, and there are a variety of consumer meters that you can measure them with. I have a little more of a professional meter here. It's the GeoVital's high frequency or high field meter. It's interesting because this is not measuring volts per meter, it's measuring microvolts.
Okay.
Microvolts is the unit of measure that the telecom industry uses to measure antenna signal strength. When they go out and measure an antenna on a cell phone tower and the strength of it, they record that in microvolts. And you can look this up on Wikipedia, so it's all online. What's interesting about this meter is we're going to use that principle to measure the antenna signal strength of the human body. And we can do that by grabbing the antenna on the tip of this. So just right now, just in that point in space, the tip of this antenna, we're getting, 400 or 500 microvolts, maybe 600 microvolts. And this is constantly varying because those wireless transmissions are constantly changing through the air, right? All the time. But that is only what's going on this tip. Our bodies are conductive, they're absorbent, and we're much larger than this tiny little point in space. So when I grab the tip and I hold it like this, you see we get up to 5,000, 4,000 microvolts. Wow. So we're in a pretty high RF area. We're in Deerfield Beach here. Certainly not the highest I've measured, but a lot higher than it ought to be. So the safe zone would hopefully be at least below 100 microvolts, but ideally below 30 microvolts.
Can I see if it varies between you and me?
Yeah. It does a little bit, and you're shorter.
Yeah,
now,
shorter.
Now keep holding on to it.
Less of me to absorb the frequency.
What I want you to do is to come down to the floor now. And see how, yeah, we can get it to go down a little bit.
It's getting lower, yeah.
Getting a little bit lower. Now go back up. And so it's getting, somewhat higher, relatively speaking, even though it's changing all the time. And that's because the RF signal is greater the higher you are. So high-rise apartments, you're at more exposure than you are closer to the ground. So that's one way to protect yourself, is get low or even go into a basement. And there are other things that influence it. How much water you've drunk, so how hydrated you are, how conductive you are with regard to, like, if you have a metal implant, and actually your height as well. So the taller you are, the better antenna you are.
Yeah, it's like you're an antenna. I'm kind of glad I'm short right now.
Aren't you glad you're short?
I'm kind of glad, yeah.
So now let's get to the point. Let's see if the Faraday, the Sauna Space Faraday here is going to give us any protection at all from this pretty high RF signal. So to do that, we need to go inside and we need to close the curtain completely and try to plug all the little cracks and holes. So in here, we're inside. You can already see it's kind of lower.
Kind of lower. I think it's a lot lower.
Instead of, just on the point before I measure my body, instead of 400 or 500 microvolts, we're down to about 30 or 40. Of course, our body's absorbing a lot more. So when I grab the tip, we're up to 800. But that, and we're getting a bounce. And you guys don't have cell phones on you, right?
No.
Very good. So what we're experiencing here is the RF that's still coming through the door. So now what we want to do is close the curtain. And we're going to go ahead and just kind of snap it down here. And then we're going to tuck the wing. We're not measuring much without the body voltage, but here, we're pretty good.
Oh, yeah, you're back in the happy zone.
We're in the happy zone. Now, it's bouncing up a little bit, and it will. But in general, you're at a point, oh yeah, this is awesome. And now, you go ahead and measure it yourself. Oh, got a little bounce. But in general, we're so low. We're incredibly low. Now, obviously, it would be best if it was zero, but we're orders of magnitude lower than what we were before. And keep in mind, we're not measuring electric fields from electricity, we're only measuring the wireless. So we're not measuring the wired electricity right now, but as you know from part 1 of this video, we're already protected from that. So this is an incredibly well-protected, safe space. And this is how a real Faraday cage works. When it's grounded like this, you can sit in here and be protected. And you see how even if I get really low, I even get a tiny bit better reading.
Yeah.
And that's, again, that height thing. So it's you know, people ask, well, is this total, complete, 1000% protection? No, this is the best thing you can get right now. Unfortunately, in certain areas where the RF signals are so powerful, and places where they're moving into introducing 5G signals, we need even more protection. So we're, you know, I, for example, have been on the path of trying to develop more and more innovative, you know, better performing shielding materials to address these new types of RF that are coming out.
But as it stands, I don't know of any other sauna that has this Faraday feature. I know that when mine is even off, when I have my panel off, I really enjoy the kind of buzz-free atmosphere that I have inside a sauna space, really do.
It does, you know, it's really, it's quiet to the senses. And for those of you who've never or haven't experienced that lately or ever, it's unusual. It's almost, it's unsettling, but like in a good way. It's like, wow. And when I have this at a trade show and a big conference and there's thousands of people around, you get inside and it feels quiet inside, and the murmur outside of like the thousands of people yelling and running around, and it all seems so far away. And it's because what we've done is we haven't just brought you back to nature, we've really transported you in time to like 1880, before electricity, before any of these electric fields things. So it's both a temporal and a physical like journey that we've undertaken here.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thanks for putting so much into your product. I'm eager to learn more.
Thanks, Hilda. I'm happy to finally show everybody this on a nice video.
Thanks for watching, you guys. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this video. Subscribe so you don't miss a thing, and click on the notification bell so you can be alerted the next time I upload a video. We'll talk soon. Hasta pronto.